some other breaking news now from Cairo, and Egyptian police have raided the office of Turkey's state news agency, Anadolu Agency, in Cairo and detained 4 of its employees. For more, let's speak to our Sarah Firth. She joins me now in the studio. Hi, Sarah. Where did this come from? Was there any indication that this office was at risk?
Well, this is part of a wider crackdown that we've seen as part of the Egyptian government under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi cracking down on media, media rights, press freedom and civil society in the country. Now, Anadolu Agency is Turkish state TV. Their office in Cairo was raided last night. 4 of the employees, we're told, were detained, and it's not clear where Egyptian security have taken them. They also raided the offices, they cut off the internet, they cut off the CCTV. Turkey's foreign ministry has come out and strongly condemned this action and called for those 4 employees to be released. One of them is a Turkish citizen. Turkey, of course, has cut diplomatic relations with Egypt in the wake of this ongoing crackdown on freedom of media and civil rights in the country. But an incredibly worrying development, and even more concerning that they don't know at the moment where these 4 staff members are being held.
You worked as a journalist as well in Cairo. What was the feeling you were getting? Is there a certain amount of pressure or just a general, I would imagine, ominous feeling that you know things are not 100% safe?
It is a very, very dangerous moment to be a journalist, especially reporting from inside Egypt right now. I reported last year when we saw the government cracking down on those peaceful protesters, a huge number of arrests across the country, in particular in Cairo. We actually went, TRT, undercover to Cairo to report, and it is an atmosphere of intimidation and fear amongst the journalists, the people we were working with, the local staff, the fixers, all incredibly concerned. Everyone has to go off camera, make sure their faces aren't shown for fear of the reprisals from the government. And it really is a very, very serious crackdown that we've seen. Just the other day, there was actually an American Egyptian citizen who died in Egyptian custody after going on hunger strike. He was detained many years ago. This is the atmosphere in which people are trying to operate right now. And we've seen the government come down extremely hard, in particular on journalists. So this raiding of Anadolu Agency's offices, the detention of 4 of their staff members, including 1 Turkish citizen, very much in line with that atmosphere of intimidation that we're seeing in particular against journalists in the country right now.
Right. It is an atmosphere of intimidation against all journalists really operating in the country. But this is an even more specific case with Anadolu Agency. Please give us some more of the context, actually, and why Turkish reporters in particular, or anyone working for Turkish agencies, might feel more threatened at this time.
As you're saying, it's incredibly risky for all journalists, but in particular if you're Turkish right now, given the breakdown in diplomatic relations between Turkey and the Egyptian government, since the Egyptian government has carried out this crackdown against both the protesters in the country and against media workers. It is a very, very risky moment. The question, of course, now is what pressure Turkey is going to be able to put on the Egyptian government, given that diplomatic relations have been severed, to try and secure their release. But it's incredibly worrying, the information around this as well. This is in keeping as well with what we've seen of arrests of other members of the public, protesters and media workers, is this storming in of the offices, no prior warning, no indication of why exactly this has taken place. Of course, Anadolu Agency have been working very hard to report the ongoing crackdown by the Egyptian government. That puts them at great risk. They're taking a huge amount of risk in covering those stories and trying to get the truth of the situation on the ground out there. We've seen the Egyptian government trying to suppress that type of information from being made public. At the end of last year, when you had these widespread protests in the country, the journalists covering those were being picked up. There was a huge, again, danger going out onto the streets with a camera to cover that. There was danger to the protesters themselves that were picked up in their thousands, some of those still dealing with the legal ramifications of that. AA are also saying that the lawyer that they have representing them has so far been denied any information by the Egyptian security forces. Again, a very worrying development, but one that is very in keeping with what we've seen the Egyptian government do in the past.
Right. There is now the concern that these people most likely very wrongfully arrested here. We haven't even been told what any charges are, that they could be used as leverage because of the geopolitical tensions at play right now, particularly between Turkey and Egypt. Turkey and Egypt have found themselves now on opposite sides of the conflict in Libya. There's a list, really, of things where Turkey and the Egyptian authorities have essentially fallen out. Walk us through some of those.
You're absolutely right. I mean, this is coming against the backdrop of the situation in Libya, where Turkey and Egypt are on opposite sides of this. And we've seen Turkey now getting on the same page with Russia and putting pressure on Khalifa Haftar and his LNA forces, which Egypt has heavily backed. When I was on the ground in Libya, you saw Egyptian weaponry, Egyptian support in terms of arms have been flowing into the fighters, the militia there run by Khalifa Haftar. It's a very, very tense moment there, and one that is going in favour right now of the UN-backed government that Turkey has been supporting. We know Turkey has put on massive pressure onto Haftar's forces by providing that extra backing to the UN-backed government of national accord. It now seems Russia is on the same page. We're just about to have an international conference that will take place in Germany. Egypt has got every reason right now to be looking for any means of leverage. Whether or not that potentially is behind the reason for the raiding of the AA offices in Cairo, for the detention of these staff, we don't know right now. But it is very, very concerning that you've seen staff, journalists get pulled into this situation right now. No information being given by the Egyptian security forces. The office raided without any indication as to why, and these staff members still unknown their whereabouts.
And that's aside from the fact that Turkey never made a secret of its opposition to the military coup that took place in Egypt that overthrew a democratically elected government.